Welcome to the world away.
Travel tales to inspire your wanderlust. Welcome back to The World Awaits. Hi, everyone. How are you? How's your week been, Kirsty?
Yeah, pretty good. I've been head down writing about my recent trip to Cambodia. Amazing experience that it was. Writing about some luxury advisors who turned digital nomads, and I'll put a link in the show notes to that one because there's some really good tips in there actually for people who want to become nomads and work remotely. We've done a bit of that lately. We did an interview on that too for this podcast. Also talking about riverboats and with there's so many new river ships coming to the Nile between now and early next year. Viking and Abercrombie and Kent have some, new ships, and they're not just your standard. When you say river ship, I mean, we're talking like jacuzzis and pools and amazing restaurants and that rival any on land. And so I'm desperate to do one. No, we talk about it a lot, Belle, because you're really keen on river cruising too. Also, I went along to Carry On's annual event, which is now in its second year, which is called Niche is Nice. So that was held actually in 3 states, but I went to the Melbourne event. And it's a chance for travel advisors to network with some of the smaller suppliers. So people like regional tourism boards, like Interlaken, and also small ship cruising. And it's another reason why going to a travel advisor when you're planning your holiday is such a good idea, because they're going to events like this all the time, obviously, and they are getting all the new intel about what's happening in the industry. How about you, Belle?
Well, the week that's gone had its highs and lows. Sick kid, power blackouts. That was fun. Delayed trains, they were the lows. The highs were hearing from Switzerland Tourism, who convinced me that I have to go to Jungfrau on the top of Europe for their magnificent scenery. Look, I have to say, it didn't take much convincing. The funny thing was at this Swiss tourism event, which was an Australian Society of Travel Writers lunch, I mentioned it to one of the guys, one of the Swiss representatives. I just don't think that they understand the impact that book Heidi had on little girls who just wanted to travel away from the baking sun of rural Australia. Anyway, that was pretty fantastic because I've only really passed through Switzerland. I haven't spent a lot of time there. I mean, have you been there, Kirsty?
Yeah, no, we've sort of skirted around the edges too. And it is so high on my list, especially after, because the same people who were at that event were obviously also at this Niche is Nice event, and they had some videos. They were playing some videos, and oh my God, watching those videos of those quintessential Swiss mountains with those little red farmhouses dwarfed by beautiful mountains. Oh my gosh. And then they had people walking in the snow, on these extremes. And oh my God. So I am manifesting to go next year hiking in Switzerland. So watch this space.
I thought it'd be one of those little red roofed houses. Will be so cute to do a podcast from. What do you reckon?
Oh yeah, but we have to do that. Let's do that.
Totally. Look, my other high this week was a stay at Marnong Estate, which is on the very northern fringe of Melbourne. It's one of those old grazing lands that's now been converted into a vineyard. And it, when it opened in 2018, I went up and reviewed it because it had only the bluestone cottage that belonged to William Angliss, who's the pastoralist who then came to create the William Angliss Institute of Tape, which is where all of the hospo workers get trained. So the property is part of the very much overlooked Sunbury wine region and is doing some fantastic Prosecco Rosé, yay, but also its Sangiovese absolutely shines. So if you're in the area, you can stay in the cabins, you can stay in the homestead, gorgeous. Have a look at my Instagram for some of those interior shots. They're just beautiful. Or even just book in for dinner at its Italian restaurants. There's a family one and a fine dining one. And I'm covering Marnong for the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. So I'll put a link to Marnong in the show notes if you are up in that neck of the woods. And while you're in the show notes, don't forget, we still have 2 books from last week's guest, Todd Thinios, to give away. So if you would like to win a copy of Ultimate Dive Sites, jump onto our Instagram at The World Awaits Podcast to follow and like our competition post.
Yeah, and he talks about snorkeling and dive sites, right? So, and he has about 50, I think he said, didn't he, dive sites in that book. So, amazing. I love listening to him last week. He's fascinating. So we're chatting today about what I'm claiming as one of the best travel terms of the year, which is called the grey gap year. Although I have to say, I was horrified to see that this refers to 50 plus year olds, which might be us, Belle. So, new research by Australian seniors has found that nearly 2 in 5 Australian, I'm not seniors, I can't believe they're saying it's seniors when you're 50,
No.
but embarked on a, this is the age group that they said 50 plus, embarked on a big holiday in the past year, which is a significant jump from less than 1 in 5 in 2022. And importantly, these trips were funded by a willingness to spend the kids' inheritance.
Yeah, the old ski acronym. But so they're calling it the Grey Gap Year. Does like what are they taking a gap year from? Like a gap year before you go into a retirement village? Like, seriously. um, I mean, look, with the ski thing, it's important to help your kids, right? But the question is, should you work your entire life to simply sit back in your retirement and do nothing, just knit? I'm sure there's some people that want to do that, but the fact that more people want to travel at an older age, and for the record, 50 is not. Like 50 is the new 30, right? I think that's just inspiring. Don't you?
Yeah, I do too. And a lot of that reference to gap year, a lot of that was because people didn't take a gap year. So that they're saying now, you're taking it as a grey gap year because you're taking it when you're older. But yeah, me too. I find that really inspiring. And I don't know if this is why I love travel so much, but my mum actually, who's more in this senior age gap year grey thing than I am, I would.
Yeah, I hope so.
She doesn't like travel. So it's a concept that's so foreign to me because I can't even get my head around how someone can't like travel. She genuinely isn't interested in traveling. Like she'll say, oh yeah, I'd love to come and see. I love coming to see you guys in Melbourne because she's in New Zealand in Auckland. But she just doesn't. It just doesn't. It's not something she wants to spend her money on. She would much rather spend her money on gardening or something. And I'm like, this is just so baffling. So maybe that's why I love travel so much. I mean, I just live and breathe for it. So I get anxiety if I don't have a trip planned.
Totally. I mean, I totally agree with you. But I mean, and it's not just because my entire livelihood depends on it, but yeah, it is a passion. I had to say, I did not have a gap year. I think I had a gap decade. I just didn't come home for, most of for about nearly 10 years. And my mum was an absolute avid traveler and lived on the smell of an oily rag to fund her many, many trips. And they were just the most bizarre places she found herself. So while the research found that 90% of Australians over 50 acknowledged the rising cost of holidays, 3 in 4 seniors still have firm travel plans. Oh, that gives me hope.
Yeah, and to make them a reality, more than 8 in 10 were prepared to cut back on other spending. So things like impulse shopping and dining out. Yeah, that's definitely me too. I'd much rather spend money. I think also cars are a waste of money. I would much rather spend, if you're going to spend 30 grand on a car, no way, I'm going to go to Europe. So yeah.
Totally, but totally.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I want to help the kids, but I'm going to be hiking and biking around the world until I literally cannot put one foot in front of the other. Like I'll be one of those people holding those sticks, those walking, hiking, ski poles, and just, carrying on, like, probably scars all down my legs from operations, and I'll still be going from where I've had knee replacements, and there'll be me still trying to get up that bloody mountain.
Yeah, be staggering along the Camino the entire 3 months journey. Fantastic. Yeah, we'll do that one together. So Gabby Walters, an associate professor with a background in tourism marketing, says it's actually good news for the travel industry, clearly. And it may not be such bad news for children because recent research reveals that less than 2 in 3 seniors believe that their children and grandchildren expect to receive an inheritance. So I don't know, maybe that's just what they're saying, right? Lovely to see the story when you are unconscious lying in a hospital bed and they think that there might be a chance of getting the money early. Who knows?
Yeah, don't ask my kids. Oh my God, they fully would expect their inheritance. So where are people going, you might ask, us 50 plus who are grey gap year people. And apparently it is this research shows that it was actually interstate in Australia, followed by the Pacific Islands, which included New Zealand, and then Southeast Asia.
So it seems that For over 50s, the key drivers are the cost of travel. So that explains interstate travel, followed by safety and security, climate, and natural scenery. And of course, visiting family and food are up there too, because, you can freeload on your family, can't you? That makes it cheap.
And when it comes to where we're all planning to go, Europe was a standout, followed by interstate again, New Zealand and Southeast Asia. So not much of a shift from where we've actually been.
And the motivators for these choices were a chance to relax, with about 60% saying that's why they wanted to travel. Other key motivators were spending quality time with family, learning about the world, searching for new experiences as well, because, new experiences and travel keeps your mind young. So we will put a link to the full report in the show notes.
This week, I'm chatting to Goddess Retreats founder Chelsea Ross, who launched the first women-only surf and yoga retreats.
Oh, that sounds interesting. Because they are like naturally symbiotic, those two. What piqued your interest in chatting with Chelsea, Kirsty?
Well, besides she was actually the pioneer of luxury women's only retreats, she's also got a really fascinating story. So she's half Australian, half Canadian, and she's lived all around the world and settled in Bali in her 20s, where she taught herself to surf. And she was saying that, you'll hear in the interview that basically when she learned to surf, she realized the importance of how you have to be in the moment, and how transformational it was to her. So she decided to dedicate her life to women's only retreats. And we also get some insider tips into how to have the best wellness experience in Bali. So take a listen. Welcome to the show, Chelsea.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
It's so nice to have you on The World Awaits. Let's start by tell us a bit about your background and how you came to be in the travel industry.
Well, my background was that I actually was studying communications, and I sort of have more of a marketing background, but I worked in the service industry from the time I was in high school all the way through college, and I always loved hotels. I grew up actually as an expat traveling around the world and got to stay in many beautiful hotels. And I ended up getting my first job out of university was working for Aman Resorts. So I say I was really always enamored by classical hotels like the Raffles, and I spent a lot of time in Asia, and so working at Aman was a great start for me. And I think that that left a lot of impression on me. And then I was actually working more in ended up doing sales training and life coaching. I've sort of always also been really interested in personal development. And somehow in 2003, I got the opportunity to marry both of my passions, which is hospitality and service and creating beautiful environments, and then also marrying that with personal development.
So how long have you been in Bali? When did you come to be in Bali?
I first arrived technically in Bali when I was about 5 years old. We lived in Jakarta, and we would come down to Bali to holiday. That was my first introduction to Bali. But it was in 1997 when I first moved back here as an adult. I had actually been living in Hong Kong in 1994, so I moved to Hong Kong when I first graduated from university, and I started revisiting all the places that we used to live when I was younger, which was Indonesia, Singapore, and the Philippines. And I just fell in love with Bali. So in 1997, I had enough of the big city life in Hong Kong, and I was like, I want to go live on a tropical island. So I moved back to Bali then, and I've been living here pretty much full time since then.
Amazing. And so when you first went there, what were you doing and how did you come to start up the world's first women-only surf and yoga retreat?
Well, when I first moved here, I really didn't have a plan. I was just like, I just want to live in this place. I just loved it so much. And I happened to get a job actually working for an American clothes designer. There's a lot of clothes manufacturing that's done here. So, the biggest industries in Bali are tourism, furniture manufacturing, and clothing and accessories and stuff. So I worked with her for a few years. And at that time too, that was when I first learned to surf. I was 27 years old, and I I'm half Australian, half Canadian, and I'd always wanted to learn to surf. But back in the day in Australia, was no surf so much in Canada, but back in the day in Australia, it wasn't really encouraged for women to surf. And if you didn't have a family member like a father or a brother or other friends and family who surfed, it was really an oral tradition. So you got passed on that way. So I made it here, and I've always loved the ocean, spent a lot of time scuba diving and body surfing and boogie boarding and all the things. So, but I hadn't picked up a surfboard. So I picked it up when I first arrived, and I fell in love with it. So I wasn't really planning on starting a surf and yoga retreat. When I first came here, I just was really about just enjoying the ocean. But, about 5 years later in 2003, after learning to surf and also learning to do yoga, I was hanging out with a couple of other women that I had learned to surf with. And one of them was a yoga instructor. And she's like, we should do a yoga retreat and you can teach them to surf. And I was thinking, yeah, that would be great. And you know what? We should just do it for women, because there really wasn't anything for women at the time. And so it really came out of, I think, wanting to create a space for women to share something that I really loved. And I also really loved Bali. There was, such a magical place and such a rich culture.
And so what was it about teaching women to surf that was important to you? Like what, and were you, I mean, you must be pretty good at surfing by that point.
Yeah, I was a pretty good surfer at that point. I mean, I've been surfing for 5 years, pretty much full time. So I think I think one of the main reasons why I really wanted to share surfing and yoga with women is, for me, I've always been really interested in personal development. Initially when I entered university, I wanted to study psychology, and that kind of transitioned into more like communications and marketing. In 1999, I started to study to become a life coach. Again, just really wanting to figure out how to live optimally. And I'd also started to study yoga, and I could really see how, for somebody like me, how surfing was such a great meditative experience. I've always been one of those people who kind of lives a lot in the future, and my mind's always going. And one of the things that I really found in the surf is that it had so many great spiritual lessons to teach, as far as, when you're out there in the surf, you have to really be in the present moment. You have to be concentrating on the wave, paddling, jumping up. And I would just notice that when I was in the surf, when I would come out, I would feel fantastic. So all the anxieties that I might be having about life, I wasn't thinking about the future. I wasn't worrying about the past. And I think being physically in the ocean and in the sun and the sea, it just, I left feeling just, my mind had had a break. My body was feeling great. And I could just see that it was there's almost like this, surfers often talk about it, this sort of pathway to like sort of more enlightened consciousness, just similar to yoga. And then obviously on a physical level, they're both fantastic for people as well. So I could just see that it was just such a positive activity to add into life, both mentally and physically. And there were yoga retreats at the time, but there really wasn't anything that combined surf and yoga, plus in a kind of more luxurious experience. So I was also just coming out of my 20s. And again, I think all of this sort of was a combination of just being able to offer something that wasn't already available, in that I had been on yoga retreats and silent fasting retreats and things like that. And I just wanted to bring it into a place where women could enjoy it in comfort, rather than having to, rough it out.
And so how was that received by women, given that no one was offering it and it was something very new? Like, how are you finding, and how does it changed over the years?
And it really attracts women who are interested in always progressing themselves, emotionally, physically, just wanting to live, their best lives. So it's been well received. And I mean, so I had been running for a number of years. And then, of course, I think it was around 2006 or 7 that Eat, Pray, Love came out. And then at that time, I had a lot of women, because there still wasn't anything much for women at the time, writing to me going, listen, we want to come on this retreat, because there was an element of life coaching, and there still is. We want to experience it, but we don't want to learn to surf. So I then started the next kind of phase, which was Bali Goddess, and we'd run both of them. And that's when, the doors really opened up, because there was such a calling for this space.
So what is it about Bali, do you think, that attracts so many people, particularly women, to wanting to have a wellness experience there?
Well, I think there's a few different ideas about that. I mean, Bali is really a magical place. It's a unique culture that's not really found on anywhere else in the world, not even in Indonesia. So I think culturally and it's a beautifully artistic and culture. And also there's spirituality is woven into their daily life in such a beautiful way through, their flower offerings that they offer every day, beautifully carved temples, music, dance. It's so rich. And I feel like that is super appealing, especially, coming from the West, where sometimes a lot of our culture has sort of been just homogenized, whereas, in Bali, it is there. It's really decorative. It's woven into life. And I think also too, because of their type of spirituality, those sorts of lessons and it being alive in life is wonderful to see on a retreat, and some of the cool things about Bali is that it's very communal, it's very loving, it's talks about patience and slowing down and gratitude, and those are all the things, those sorts of qualities that we are nurturing on the retreat. So I think that's and the Balinese people themselves are so warm, open-hearted, and it's one of those places too where they invite you into their culture. So a lot of the really popular things that women love to do on the retreats is going along to like the holy spring temples and having a cleansing ceremony, and then having a blessing ceremony with the priest with flowers and incense. And it's a wonderful, these are rituals that we don't get to experience in a day-to-day life, but they really help us to reflect and kind of set intentions. And a lot of women come on retreats. In retreats, generally, people are usually coming when they're in a life transition period. So they might be, celebrating a milestone birthday. They might be changing careers. They might be changing relationships. There's a lot of, usually that sort of, they're at that stage. So in life, and again, in usual day-to-day life, we don't have too many rituals these days. So it's really nice to have that time where you can come away, and most of our guests, like 80% of them, are solo travelers. So it's a really unique time where you can come away by yourself, still be with a group, and it's a beautiful community. And we really facilitate a space where there's a lot of, very open sharing. But you can also use that time to be quite introspective, and then, layer in the different activities that you want to do. Like for surfing, one of the things that I really loved about it, why I wanted to share it with women, because I found it very empowering. In fact, I think the whole retreat experience is very empowering, traveling on your own. So, and it's something that you do that's experiential. So it's not just theory. When you travel halfway across the world on your own, and you go out on the surf and you learn a new activity surfing, you empower yourself, because you think, oh, if I can do this, then what else can I do?
And is that solo women, that increasing solo women that you're seeing traveling, is that something sort of, that's just come in recent years? Like, and what's the reasons that all of a sudden it's growing?
No, it was from day one. It was always solo women travel. I just think that for me, I think I was just in a unique place and time of really creating what I was looking for myself. And like I said, I was 29, so I had gotten too old to sort of backpack. But there really wasn't anything other than, standard hotels or group travel. And at that age, a lot of friends and, family are all, either working or raising families and that. And it was really hard to find other people to travel with. So I had originally started it for solo women travelers. And it's always been the case, 80%. I think just the travel industry just took a little bit of time to figure out that there was this huge solo travel market, which it is now today. It's well recognized, but back then it wasn't. But I don't know, I always just kind of knew that people would want to get away, and you can't always find travel partners, and at the same time you want to be, in a place where you can travel alone without feeling alone.
Yeah.
I think that was, yeah.
And Bali's often seen, I mean, obviously a lot of Australians go to Bali. They get a bit of a bad rap for their behaviour there. And
Yeah.
and then obviously there's that luxury end of the market. So what about what are sort of some of the places that maybe some solo female travellers, what are some of the specific places that are the best places you think to go to have a solo travel wellness experience in Bali?
Obviously there's the coast if you're if you're a beach person, but I think one of the places that really people love to go, and it's a center of culture, is around Ubud and north of Ubud. There's so many different temples there. There's waterfalls, and of course, anywhere in Bali, there's lots of spa. I mean, wellness is, I think, baked into the culture here. But I would say around Ubud, there are some of the most beautiful temples. And, you can always research out and see if you can find different healers. That's one of the things that we do, is obviously create relationships with these, local healers, local guides who can take people off the beaten track a little bit these days in Bali, because, over the years, Bali has become a very, very popular tourist place. So it is about really finding those untouched spaces to go to.
Yeah, and what are some of those? I mean, just because of the fact that obviously we are facing a bit of over tourism now. So what are some of those lesser known places that people could maybe go to if they were coming, specifically, because obviously entwined in that sort of wellness experience is not being in an environment where it's over touristed.
If people are looking for maybe areas that aren't as well known in Bali and they like to get off the beaten track, I think that North Bali is quite unexplored, and it's because it's a little bit further away. It's about a 4-hour drive from South Bali, but up there you've got places like Pemudaran, which is a national marine park, and it's really popular for scuba diving and snorkeling. And there's also some great wrecks up the north there. And other places that I know that are getting quite popular is Ahmed. So all around that northern area, as I say, it's not as busy as South Bali. And there's lots of temples. There's waterfalls up there, and I say lots of opportunity to enjoy the ocean, although that there isn't any surf up there. So I think that's an area of Bali worth exploring.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you just jump in what's the best way to get up there?
Well, in Bali, one of the great things is it's really set up for, catering to tourism. So you can organize private drivers. That would probably be the easiest one. And, and usually there's a few hotels up there, and they can even help organize people with transport. So I'd say that's the easiest one. And there's also a great system here, similar to Uber in Australia, but it's called Gojek, and you can, get on the app and organize a car, and they'll take you up there.
And as far as how do you think the industry is going to evolve? Like, how's wellness, do you think, going to change, or people's what they're looking for in regards to, particularly in Bali?
Well, I mean, but wellness is so popular in Bali, and I think one of the things that I've seen it really evolve over the years, and one thing I didn't predict, which I find is fascinating, is that gyms and Pilates studios and all this type of like active wellness has really, really blossomed here. Um, so it's places, people come here to like, some of the best gyms in the world. And one of the biggest crazes that started here is paddle, which is a bit like pickleball, but it's a racket sport. And if it hasn't already exploded in Australia, I can tell you it's going to be one of the biggest sports trends coming. So, I think that's definitely a direction where Bali is taking off. And I know that some of the bigger gyms here, like Body Factory, that also offer accommodation, they're building in Canggu, they're going to be opening up in Uluwatu, they're, going all the way across the island. There's paddle all the way across the island. So I think one of the main things that, I see that's the future of wellness is there's going to be a continuation definitely of all different types of wellness treatments. But I can really see that people now really equate holidays and vacations with not just going to visit a place, but also to go and take time for their health and wellness. And that might mean, going to the gym and playing a game of paddle, going for a surf. It's it's really a time of rejuvenation as far as like having that free time to, do all these different activities. So I think that's a really positive thing. And I think that's been kind of the basis of uh, what I kind of started with the retreats, in the way of like reframing the idea of a holiday as, when I was younger, it was all about, lying by the pool, having a few cocktails, etc., and going out. And there's definitely still a huge place for that. But also too, like, once a year, maybe taking yourself off and going on a wellness holiday.
Yeah.
You're doing different activities.
Absolutely. So, and what would be some tips you would say to someone who wants to start, like a woman in particular who wants to start surfing? Like, how would you, give me 3 tips of how to get started and into surfing?
Well, definitely the best way to start surfing is to take lessons. So whether you're doing that at home or you want to do it at a destination like Bali, is to find a great surf school or a surf camp or a surf retreat, and there are so many of them out there that teaches lessons, because it's a super fun sport, and if you're just taught the right way, you can progress really quickly. But if you don't have lessons, it can take a while. Um, and I think the other main tip that I would say would be to, just remember to have fun, because, you know, especially if you're learning it a little bit later in life, there's no pathway to becoming a professional. So it's just all about enjoying it. And sometimes, when we're learning new things, it can be frustrating, but just to remember that it's, it's about getting out there and having fun, and just even attempting it is half the journey done, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, I think that's a lot to be said for people who don't know how to surf, to maybe just give it a go and have a bit of fun with it and not put too much pressure on yourself.
Absolutely, because a lot of times, when I'm teaching women to surf, they're like, "Oh, I'm just so bad at this," and I'm like, "It's your second lesson. You are a beginner. Nobody got on a surfboard and was great at it. Maybe maybe fifth, 5 years old, but so just relax, and half the fun is falling off. And that's one of the things too about surfing, I must say, is that what I loved about it and learning is that sense of play. As adults, there's not too many opportunities where we can just be goofy and play and have fun. Especially in nature, and because it's not a what would say, like a team sport, or like pair sport. You really are just playing, with yourself. You're just experiencing it yourself. You're not trying to hit the ball back to somebody else. So it's like really just embrace that and have fun.
So unfortunately, we are running out of time. So I'm going to ask you the question we ask all our interviewees, which is, what's the most bizarre thing that's ever happened to you on your travels?
Well, yeah, I don't think I have a story that's, like I lost my passport or anything like that. But definitely one trip was really significant for me. And that was after a couple of years after I'd been living in Bali. A friend of mine invited me to go to Biarritz to surf with her in France. And she was one of the girls I learned to surf with, and she was selling this beautiful mermaid-inspired jewelry. And I ended up meeting her there, and we got invited to the Quicksilver head office. And I got to meet, my surfing idol, Mickey Dora. I was just introduced to him, and I was in awe because I loved him because he was such a great stylish surfer, and he was also a bit of a surf rebel. And at the time, I was, doing the French thing. I was wearing sort of, my black capri pants and a black jacket, and actually, I didn't really realize it at the time, but a black top with the word goddess on it. And I remember him saying, I like your style, and I was like, oh my gosh, and looking back, the seeds of surf goddess were, being planted there. I really feel like it was a bit of the universe winking at me. And then later on in that trip, I hadn't learned yoga yet, but I ended up in Barcelona, traveling solo, and I really was feeling really lost and uncomfortable. And I was at a backpackers, and I was like, I'm too old for this. And I had been reading this book called The Alchemist, which was all about sort of, following the signs of the universe to discover your destiny. And I had just finished that book, and I had put it on the shelf at the hostel, and I had, was looking for another book, and there wasn't too many in English. So I picked up another book called The Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, because I was feeling lost, and I just really wanted to figure out, what to do with my life and where was I going, and next. And I called my mom on the phone because it was, before mobiles then. And I was like, Mom, I really don't know what to do. I don't really, not really enjoying this backpacking thing anymore. I'm thinking I'm aging out of it, and I don't know where to go next, what to do. And she's like, oh, well, I'm here in California actually right now. And I just got back, and I was learning yoga at this place, that's associated with Paramahansa Yogananda. And I was like, what? Because I literally had the book in my hand. I was like, did he write this book? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I had this book in my hand, realizing this is a sign. She's like, oh, you know that they have an ashram in Assisi in Italy. And I was like, no. And she's like, yeah, you should go there. So, I got off that phone call and thought, oh, this is a sign. So I jumped on a train and made it to Italy. And I spent a month, learning meditation, getting up at 4:30 in the morning and doing my first yoga asana practices, and that trip alone, now I look at it, and it was like, really, the universe was like, look, these are the things that you want in your life, and kind of were the seeds of creating my whole life story, I guess, in a way.
Wow.
So
All through meeting your hero and listening to your mum.
yeah, and just following the signs. So, I think traveling is wonderful. Not only do you get to see beautiful places and learn new cultures, but you also get to have an internal journey, and just and it's such a profound way of shaping our life with all the different influences we learn when we travel.
Oh, amazing. It's been so great to talk to you, and we will put a link to all of your retreats and your business in the show notes, so people can look into it if they want an exceptional wellness experience in Bali.
Well, thank you so much, Kirsty. It's been lovely talking with you.
I love hearing how she broke into what was such a male-dominated area and really opened the door for women to learn how to surf. And doing it in such a spiritual place, as she says. So if you want to learn more about Chelsea's retreats, go to goddessretreats.com, and we will put that link in the show notes.
This week, our tip is about food etiquette in Japan. And I have to say, not that everyone knows this, but regardless if you've been to Japan or not, but the food is pretty incredible. Definitely a highlight when I was there on Shikoku Island in Naoshima. And that region where I was is famous for its udon noodles, which are just, oh my God, mouth-watering delicious. But all over Japan, there are dishes specific to each region and foods so intrinsic to the cultural and importance across the country that it's also been added to the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage List.
And along with the importance of food, there's also certain things you should and shouldn't do when you are eating in Japan. So the Japanese National Tourism Organization has given us some top tips so you don't come across as a total slob or embarrass everybody else at the table. So with so many of us traveling to Japan right now or planning to travel to Japan, it is a reminder of how to eat in Japan so you're respectful of the culture.
Yeah, so first up, and this might surprise some people, you do slurp your noodles. And I experienced in a noodle bar in Shikoku. I was shocked actually at how many people, when we walked in, were honestly doing this. They were literally slurping their noodles. But yeah, it's absolutely seen as the norm, which is the opposite of what we taught when we were kids.
Well, do you know that thing about kids always learn about travel, apparently belching after a meal in some Germanic countries? I think it's an appreciation thing. It's like yum, yum, slow, slow. So I think kids all love that. That makes it just such a great place to travel with.
Yeah, but I don't know if I'm like a perimenopausal meme, but when my husband slurps next to me, I'm about to punch him in the face.
All right. So go to Japan where you get arrested for punching your husband for slurping his noodles, right? So also the Japanese table, unlike other cuisines, isn't laden with ginormous plates of food that go to waste. I am looking at you, Arabian table. In Japan, everything is considered, including the portion size, and you should only ever bring a manageable piece to your mouth. So you're not tearing hunks of food from your mouth. I mean, I find that so disgusting anyway. And that's my slap in the face to the eating husband. So they also say to bring the serving dish to your mouth, not vice versa. So you're not hunched over the table with your face in your bowl, just chowing on down.
Yeah, although I have to say those sleepers were doing that when I was in Shikoku. But yeah, another table manner is actually the same as what we're taught, which is don't put your elbows on the table and don't eat directly from the communal platter. So you should always put, some onto a smaller plate. So don't be a guts, basically.
Well, I kind of don't understand the elbows on the table thing, except that it doesn't look very nice. But also it does ruin the beauty of the table, and that is a big component. You eat with your eyes first, and I think the Japanese table really expresses that. This is all making me very, very hungry, so I think I'm going to have to head off. I'm craving Japanese. I'm actually craving Japanese at the moment, so I'm going to go and practice what we preach, Kirsty. Next week, we are talking to the glow-bright human that is comedian, radio and TV presenter Sarah Marie Cameron. You might know her as the co-host of House of Wellness on the 9 network, which includes 3AW and 2GB. She is an absolute powerhouse, and we are talking about being a neurodivergent travel writer. So tune in for that one next week.
Cannot wait. Sarah Marie is incredible. I love listening to her. I cannot wait for that one. And we'd love it if you followed us on socials. You can find us at The World Awaits Podcast on Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. And feel free to drop us a line at hello@theworldawaits.au. Or if you're enjoying this episode, please give us a rating and review.
That's a wrap for The World Awaits this week. Click to subscribe anywhere you listen to your favourite pods.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.